I returned home from visiting my sick mother in Oregon to find my husband, Derek, waiting in our living room with champagne, and an expression I had never seen before, pure arrogance mixed with triumph. He announced he made a major business move while I was away. When I asked what investment, he leaned back with a smirk and said he sold my jewelry collection. Every single piece. They funded his empire. I burst out laughing, and his face darkened with confusion. The jewelry he sold was not what he thought it was. My laughter echoed through our living room, filling the space between us with a sound Derek clearly had not expected. His confident smirk faltered, replaced by a flash of confusion that twisted into something darker. Anger. I watched the transformation happen across his face and felt strangely detached from it all, as though I were observing a stranger rather than the man I had married 3 years ago. I set down my suitcase near the door and walked slowly to the couch, settling into the cushions with deliberate calm. My heart was racing, but I refused to let him see any tremor in my composure. 10 days away caring for my mother, watching her struggle through pneumonia, and I come home to this. The universe had a twisted sense of timing. "Explain to me exactly what you did," I said, keeping my voice level and clear. Derek's confusion melted back into that smugness I was beginning to despise. He poured himself a glass of champagne, not bothering to offer me one, and launched into his explanation with the enthusiasm of a child showing off a straight-A report card. He had been struggling with his tech startup for 2 years, he reminded me. As if I could forget. Every conversation for the past 24 months had revolved around his company, his vision, his need for capital. He had asked me for money countless times, 50,000 here, 30,000 there. I had refused every request, not because I wanted to see him fail, but because I knew something he refused to acknowledge. His business plan was fundamentally flawed. I had worked in tech consulting for 8 years before switching to nonprofit management. I understood the industry. His idea was not innovative enough, his market research was thin, and his financial projections were fantasy. But Derek never wanted to hear criticism. He wanted a blank check and blind faith. So he found another way. While I was in Oregon, sleeping in a chair next to my mother's hospital bed and praying she would recover, Derek was here, going through my things. He found the combination to my safe, he told me proudly, tucked inside an old planner I kept in my desk drawer. He had been looking for it for weeks, he admitted, without a trace of shame. Inside that safe was my jewelry collection. Or what he thought was my jewelry collection. He described each piece to me as though I did not know them intimately. The diamond necklace with the intricate platinum setting, the emerald earrings that caught the light like captured forest leaves, the pearl sets, 3 different strands in graduated sizes, the gold bracelets, delicate chains that whispered against skin, the sapphire ring that could have graced royalty. He had taken every single piece. He found a private collector online, someone named Paul Henderson who specialized in estate jewelry. They met in a coffee shop downtown. Henderson examined everything, made an offer on the spot. $80,000. Derek accepted, transferred the pieces, and deposited the money the same day. "I already invested it," Derek said, his chest puffing with pride. "I hired 3 new developers, finally got the talent I needed. I signed a lease on office space downtown, a real professional environment. I bought new equipment, upgraded our servers. Ida, this is going to change everything for us. In 6 months, we'll be profitable. In a year, we'll be millionaires." He kept talking, spinning his fantasy future, but I was barely listening anymore. I was thinking about my grandmother, about the lessons she taught me, about the precautions she insisted I take. "Do you have documentation?" I asked, interrupting his monologue. "Of the sale?" "Of course." He pulled out his phone, swiped through screens, and showed me everything. The bank deposit, $80,000, dated 4 days ago. A receipt from Paul Henderson, itemized list of pieces, purchase price, signature, photos of the jewelry Derek had sent to Henderson before the meeting, close-up showing the details of each piece. I examined everything carefully, taking my time, nodding slowly as I absorbed the information. Derek watched me, his confidence wavering again. "Why are you not upset?" he demanded. "Why were you laughing? This is good news, Ida. I am building our future. What is yours is mine. We are married. I had every right to use those assets." I looked up at him, and something in my expression made him take a step back. "You want to know why I am laughing?" I asked quietly. "You want to know why I am not upset?" He nodded, suddenly uncertain. "Because, Derek, that jewelry you sold was costume jewelry. High-quality reproductions. My grandmother made them in her workshop. The real pieces, the actual inherited collection, those have been sitting in a bank vault across town for the past 2 years." The color drained from his face so quickly, I thought he might faint. He grabbed the back of a chair, knuckles white, staring at me as though I had just told him the sky was falling. "That is not possible," he whispered. "They looked real. They felt real. Henderson would not have paid $80,000 for fakes." "He paid $80,000 for pieces he believed were real," I corrected. "My grandmother was a master jewelry designer. She created museum-quality costume pieces for theater productions and private collectors. What you sold were her teaching samples, demonstration pieces she used in her workshops. They are worth maybe $3,000 total in materials and craftsmanship. Probably less." I stood up, walked to my office, and returned with a folder I had prepared 2 years ago, after my grandmother passed away. Inside were bank documents showing the safety deposit box rental, an insurance policy covering $400,000 in jewelry, and a professional appraisal from a certified gemologist. Derek snatched the papers from my hands, scanning them frantically, his breathing growing more rapid with each page. "This cannot be happening," he muttered. "This cannot be real." But it was real. Every word I had spoken was true. And as the reality of what he had done began to sink in, I watched my husband transform from a confident entrepreneur into a panicked criminal. Derek stood frozen in the middle of our living room, the papers trembling in his hands. I could see his mind racing, trying to find a way out, a loophole, some explanation that would make this nightmare disappear. "You are lying," he said finally, but there was no conviction in his voice. "You are trying to punish me for taking initiative. Those pieces were real. I know they were." I sat back down on the couch, feeling suddenly exhausted. The 10 days with my mother had taken their toll. I had not slept properly in over a week. I had been surviving on hospital, coffee, and cafeteria sandwiches, watching machines breathe for the woman who raised me, praying for her recovery. And now, instead of coming home to comfort and support, I was dealing with this. "My grandmother taught me everything she knew about jewelry design," I said, keeping my voice patient despite my fatigue. "She started her career in New York in the 1970s, working for major theater companies. She created pieces for Broadway shows, for opera productions, for private collectors who wanted the look of fine jewelry without the insurance costs. She was brilliant at it." I pointed to the appraisal in Derek's hands. "Those teaching samples you sold, she made those specifically to show her students the difference between real gems and high-quality imitations. She used cubic zirconia instead of diamonds, synthetic emeralds and sapphires, cultured pearls instead of natural ones. To the untrained eye, they are indistinguishable from the real thing. Even to some trained eyes." Derek was shaking his head, still refusing to accept it. "Then where is the note? Where is the label? How was I supposed to know?" "There was a note," I said quietly. "In the safe, in a separate envelope. My grandmother wrote detailed documentation about each piece, but I moved that envelope 3 months ago." His head snapped up. 3 months ago? Why?" "Because 3 months ago, I noticed you searching the house. I came home early from work one day and caught you going through my desk. You told me you were looking for stamps. I did not believe you. So I tested you." The words hung between us, heavy and damning. "You tested me?" Derek's voice rose. You set me up? I gave you a chance, I corrected. A chance to be honest. A chance to respect my property. And my boundaries. You failed. Derek's phone rang, startling us both. He looked at the screen, and what little color had returned to his face disappeared again. It is Henderson, he whispered. Answer it, I said. He did, putting it on speaker with shaking hands. Derek, a man's voice came through, cold and clipped. We need to talk about the jewelry you sold me. What about it? Derek tried to sound casual and failed miserably. I had it appraised today. Professional evaluation. Your pieces are fakes. High-quality costume jewelry, not authentic gems. Do you have any idea what kind of position that puts me in? I paid you $80,000 for merchandise worth maybe $2,000-3,000 at most. Derek looked at me with desperate, pleading eyes. I looked away. There must be some mistake, Derek stammered. I was told they were authentic. They were inherited pieces, family heirlooms. I do not care what you were told, Henderson said, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. I care that you defrauded me out of $77,000, and I want it back. All of it. Plus $50,000 for the trouble, for the damage to my reputation when word gets out about this transaction. $50,000? Derek's voice cracked. That is not fair. I did not know they were reproductions. This is a misunderstanding. You have 1 week, Henderson said. $130,000. Cash. Or, I go to the police and file a fraud report. You sold me fake merchandise under false pretenses. That is criminal fraud, Derek. You will go to prison. The line went dead. Derek stood there, phone still in his hand, staring at nothing. Then, slowly, he turned to me. You have to help me, he said. Ida, please. I need the real jewelry. We can sell it, pay Henderson back, fix this whole mess. No. What do you mean, no? I will go to prison. Is that what you want? I want you to face the consequences of your actions, I said, standing up. You stole from me, Derek. You violated my trust. You took something that was not yours without permission. And now you are facing the results of that choice. But we are married, he pleaded. What is yours is mine, right? Community property. I had a right to use those assets for our future. California is a community property state, I agreed. But inherited assets remain separate property. That jewelry was mine alone. You had no legal right to it. And even if you did, you should have talked to me first. You should have asked. Instead, you snuck around, broke into my safe, and sold my property while I was caring for my dying mother. She is not dying, Derek snapped, his desperation turning to cruelty. She had pneumonia. She is fine now, right? You are being dramatic. I looked at him, really looked at him, and wondered how I had ever convinced myself I loved this man. Get out, I said quietly. What? Get out of this house. Go to a hotel. Go to your brother's place. I do not care where you go. But you are not staying here tonight. This is my house too, he said, but he was already backing toward the door, some part of him recognizing that he had pushed too far. Actually, I said, pulling out another document from my folder, this house is in my name only. I purchased it before we married with money from my grandmother's estate, another separate property asset. So no, Derek, this is not your house, and I want you out of it. Now. He left. The door slammed behind him, and I was alone in the silence. I walked to the window and watched his car pull out of the driveway, taillights disappearing down the street. Then I picked up my phone and called my attorney. It was time to end this marriage. The next 3 days passed in a blur of phone calls, documentation, and devastating discoveries. Derek called me 17 times the first day alone. I did not answer. He left voicemails that progressed from apologetic to angry to desperate. I saved every one. Paul Henderson, true to his word, increased the pressure. Derek forwarded me threatening emails detailing exactly what kind of criminal charges he would pursue if he did not receive his money. Fraud, grand theft, conspiracy. The list went on. Derek had 1 week, Henderson reminded him. 7 days to produce $130,000 or face prosecution. Derek had already spent the $80,000. Every penny. The developers he claimed to hire, the office space he supposedly rented, the equipment he said he purchased. All real expenses that he could not reverse. Money gone. He showed up at the house on the second day, looking like he had not slept. I let him in only because my attorney advised me to hear him out, to document everything he said. "I am sorry," he said, standing in the same living room where this nightmare had begun. "Ida, I am so sorry. I made a terrible mistake. I was desperate to make the company work, to prove to you that I could succeed. I was not thinking clearly. Please, you have to help me. I will go to prison if you do not." I sat across from him, noting the dark circles under his eyes, the tremor in his hands. "You should have thought about that before you stole from me." "It was not stealing. We are married. I thought I had the right." "You knew you did not have the right. That is why you did it while I was gone. That is why you went through my desk to find the safe combination instead of just asking me for it." He had no answer to that. Over the next hour, Derek cycled through every manipulation tactic in his arsenal. He apologized again and again. He cried, real tears streaming down his face. He raged, accusing me of being heartless and cruel. He tried bargaining, promising to do anything, sign anything, if I would just help him this one time. I remained unmoved. But I was not idle. While Derek spiraled, I was investigating. And what I found made me physically ill. That evening, after Derek left empty-handed and more desperate than before, I sat down with his laptop. He had left it at the house when he moved out, probably forgot about it in his panic. I knew his password. He had never bothered to hide it from me. What I discovered in his files and messages shattered what little remained of my trust. Emails going back 6 months with a woman named Paige. She worked at the tech company where Derek used to be employed before striking out on his own. The early messages were professional, collaborative discussions about potential projects. But they evolved quickly into something else entirely. Flirtatious messages. Then explicit ones. Photos I wished I could unsee. Plans to meet at hotels, receipts from restaurants I recognized because Derek had told me he was at business dinners. Lies stacked upon lies. But worse than the affair itself was what Derek had told Paige about me. In message after message, he painted me as a cold, controlling woman who refused to support his dreams. He told her I hoarded my inheritance like a dragon guarding treasure. He said I was emotionally distant, that our marriage had been dead for over a year. He promised Paige that once his company took off, once he had enough money to stand on his own, he would leave me. The jewelry sale was supposed to be his ticket out. I sat there in the dark, laptop screen glowing, reading through the evidence of my husband's betrayal, and felt something inside me harden into resolve. But the affair was not the worst of it. I kept digging, driven by a sick need to know the full truth, and I found it. Credit card statements in my name, cards I had never applied for, $20,000 in charges, luxury hotels, expensive dinners. Gifts for Paige, I realized, cross-referencing the dates with their messages. Derek had forged my signature on the applications, opened accounts in my name, and destroyed my credit while funding his double life. Loan applications, also with forged signatures. Most had been denied, thank goodness, but 2 had gone through. Small personal loans, $5,000 each, that I knew nothing about until I saw the statements. Bank records from our joint account showing a pattern of small withdrawals over the past year. $50 here, $100 there. Amounts small enough that I had not noticed, but they added up to thousands. Money that was supposed to go toward our mortgage, our bills, our future. Money that went to hotels and restaurants and gifts for another woman. I thought about the burglary Derek reported 8 months ago. Someone broke in while we were both at work, he said. They took my father's watch collection, vintage pieces my dad had left me when he passed away 5 years earlier. We filed a police report. We called the insurance company. I mourned those watches, the last tangible connection to my father. There had been no burglary. Derek sold them. I found the receipts buried in an old email folder. He sold my father's watches to a pawn shop for $6,000. He used the money to pay off gambling debts. Gambling debts. I found those records too, once I knew what to look for. Online betting accounts, sports gambling, poker sites. He had been playing for at least 2 years, losing steadily, chasing losses with more bets. The classic spiral. The $80,000 from my jewelry, the money he told me went into his business, most of it had actually gone to clearing his gambling debts. The developers, the office space, the equipment, those were real expenses, but much smaller than he claimed, maybe $20,000 total. The rest went to bookies and online casinos and desperate attempts to break even. Our entire marriage was a lie. Every conversation, every moment of intimacy, every promise for our future, all of it was built on a foundation of deception. When Derek returned the next day, I was ready for him. I know about Paige, I said as soon as he walked through the door. He froze. I know about the credit cards you opened in my name. I know about the forged loan applications. I know about the gambling debts. I know there was no burglary last year. You sold my father's watches to pay off your bets. Derek's face went white, then gray. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. The $80,000 from my jewelry, I continued, my voice steady despite the rage burning in my chest. Most of it went to pay off your gambling debts, did it not? The business expenses were real, but nowhere near what you claimed. You have been lying to me about everything. He found his voice finally, and what came out was not denial or apology but confession. He broke down completely, words pouring out in a desperate flood. Yes, he had been gambling. Yes, he had a problem. Yes, he had been with Paige. Yes, he had forged my signature, stolen from our accounts, sold my father's watches. Yes, yes, yes to everything. But I can fix it, he pleaded on his knees now, literally begging. Ida, please. Help me one more time. Help me pay off Henderson, and I will go to rehab. I will get help for the gambling. I will end things with Paige. I will do whatever you want. Just do not let me go to prison. I looked down at him. This man I had promised to love and cherish, and felt nothing but contempt. Get out, I said. Get out of my house, and do not come back. He left, finally understanding that I was done, that there was no coming back from this. I called my attorney and told her everything. We would not just file for divorce, we would press charges, identity theft, fraud, forgery, every crime he had committed, documented, and reported. Derek had built his empire on lies and theft. Now it was time for it to collapse. I changed the locks the next morning. A locksmith came at 8, efficient and professional, installing new deadbolts on every door. I stood in my kitchen drinking coffee, watching him work, feeling the first real sense of security I had experienced in days. My attorney, a sharp woman named Caroline, who specialized in family law and fraud cases, met me at her office that afternoon. I brought 3 folders packed with evidence: bank statements, credit card records, email printouts, photos of Derek's messages with Paige. Everything organized chronologically, each piece of deception documented and dated. Caroline spread the materials across her conference table, reading quickly, making notes. When she finished, she looked up at me with something like admiration in her eyes. This is bulletproof, she said. You have him completely. The identity theft alone is a felony. Add in the forgery, the fraud, and we can bury him legally. But first, we need to deal with the immediate threat. Tell me more about Paul Henderson. I explained what I knew. The private collector who bought the fake jewelry. His threats to press charges against Derek. The 1-week deadline, now down to 4 days. Let me look into Henderson, Caroline said. Something about this does not sit right. Legitimate collectors do not typically threaten criminal charges this aggressively. They lawyer up and sue in civil court. The fact that he is going straight to threats of prosecution suggests he might have his own reasons for avoiding official channels. She was right. That night, after alerting my bank about the fraudulent accounts and filing police reports about the identity theft, I did my own research on Paul Henderson. It did not take long to find what Caroline suspected. Paul Henderson had a record: 2 arrests for receiving stolen property, 1 conviction that resulted in probation. His collector business was a front for a fencing operation. He dealt in stolen goods, estate jewelry acquired through questionable means, items that could not be traced back to their original owners. Henderson could not go to the police about Derek selling him fake jewelry because doing so would expose his entire operation. Any investigation into the transaction would reveal Henderson's history, his patterns, his network. He was bluffing. But Derek did not know that. I made copies of everything I found on Henderson: criminal records, news articles about his arrest, photos from his court appearances. Then I packaged it all up and sent it to Derek through my attorney with a simple message: use this leverage. Derek called me within an hour, his voice shaking with hope. Ida, this is incredible. Henderson cannot go to the cops. He is a criminal himself. I can call his bluff. You can, I agreed. But that does not fix the fundamental problem, Derek. You sold fake jewelry to a fence. He paid you $80,000 in good faith, even if his business is not legitimate. He is out that money because of you. He cannot report you, but he can hurt you in other ways. Men like Henderson do not let debts go unpaid. The hope in Derek's voice died. What do I do? You negotiate. You use this information to get him to lower his demands. Offer him what you can afford to pay. Make him understand that pressing this further will hurt both of you. Derek met with Henderson 2 days later. I did not go, but Derek called me afterward from his brother's apartment where he had been staying. He agreed to $40,000, Derek said. Final settlement. If I pay him $40,000, he walks away and we never speak again. That is better than $130,000, I said. But I do not have $40,000, Derek said, the desperation creeping back into his voice. I spent everything. I am in debt, Ida. Between the credit cards, the loans, the bookies I still owe, I am underwater by at least $60,000. And now I need to find $40,000 more to keep Henderson from sending people after me. That sounds like your problem. Please. His voice broke. Just this once. I know you hate me. I know I destroyed everything. But if you help me this one time, I will sign whatever divorce papers you want. I will give you the house, the car, everything. I will disappear from your life completely. Just please do not let them hurt me. I thought about it, not because I cared about Derek's well-being, but because I wanted this over. I wanted him gone, legally and permanently. And I knew that dragging out the divorce while Derek dealt with criminals and debt collectors would only prolong my own suffering. I will pay Henderson the $40,000, I said finally. But you will sign a post-nuptial agreement before I write that check. You will give up all claims to the house, the real jewelry, any shared assets. You will admit in writing to the affair, the identity theft, the gambling debts, everything. You will agree to pay me back every penny I spend cleaning up your mess, including the $40,000 for Henderson. And you will agree to an uncontested divorce with terms I dictate. Anything, Derek said. I will sign anything. Caroline drew up the documents. They were comprehensive and brutal. Derek would walk away from our marriage with his car, his clothes, and nothing else. He would owe me over $80,000 in restitution. He would have no claim to my property, my inheritance, or my future earnings. The post-nuptial agreement was ironclad, designed to survive any legal challenge. We met at Caroline's office. Derek signed everything without reading it, his hand shaking, his eyes desperate. I transferred $40,000 to an escrow account Caroline had set up. She verified Henderson's agreement to settle, then released the funds. It was done. Derek left the office looking like a man who had escaped execution but lost everything in the process. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt hollow. That hollow feeling lasted exactly 3 days. 3 days of believing the nightmare was finally over. 3 days of starting to imagine my life without Derek, of planning my future alone. Then Caroline called me at work, her voice tight with anger. "Derek filed a counter-petition," she said. "He is contesting the divorce." "What? He cannot. He signed the post-nuptial agreement. He is claiming it was signed under duress. He hired a new attorney, some shark named Marcus Graham. They are arguing that you coerced him into signing when he was in a vulnerable mental state, that the terms are unconscionable, and that he deserves half of all marital assets, including the house. He is also requesting spousal support." I sat down hard in my office chair, the room spinning around me. How is this possible? We have all the evidence. The fraud, the affair, the theft. "Graham is good," Caroline said grimly. "He is arguing that the evidence was obtained illegally, that you violated Derek's privacy by accessing his laptop and phone without permission. He is trying to get it all excluded, and he is painting Derek as a man with a disease, gambling addiction, who needs compassion and support, not punishment. Can he win? In court, anything can happen. The postnuptial might hold up, or it might not. Judges have discretion. If Graham can convince the court that Derek was coerced, that he was not in his right mind when he signed, we could be in trouble. Even if we win, it will take months, maybe years. Litigation is expensive and exhausting, Ida. I need you to be prepared for that." I hung up the phone and stared at the wall, feeling the rage build inside me like a living thing. Derek had agreed to everything. I had saved him from Henderson, from criminal prosecution, from physical harm. And this was how he repaid me, by trying to take half of everything I owned. But I had not come this far to lose now. If Derek wanted a war, I would give him one. The divorce proceedings turned ugly fast. What should have been a simple dissolution of a 3-year marriage became a months-long battle of wills, legal maneuvering, and increasingly bitter testimony. Derek's attorney, Marcus Graham, was everything Caroline had warned me about. Slick, aggressive, and willing to paint any narrative that served his client. In the first hearing, Graham argued that I was a controlling spouse who had isolated Derek financially, refused to support his entrepreneurial ambitions, and deliberately set traps to entrap him in compromising positions. "My client made mistakes," Graham acknowledged smoothly. "He struggles with gambling addiction, a disease recognized by medical professionals worldwide. He acted impulsively, yes, but he was driven to desperation by a spouse who held all the financial power in the relationship and wielded it as a weapon." I sat next to Caroline, listening to this fiction, and forced myself to remain calm. Graham continued. "Miss Ida deliberately left fake jewelry in a safe, knowing her husband might access it in a moment of weakness. She set him up to fail, then refused to help him when he faced criminal consequences. What kind of spouse does that? This is not a partnership. This is financial abuse." Caroline countered with our evidence, but Graham objected at every turn. He argued that I had obtained the emails and messages illegally by accessing Derek's devices without his permission. He claimed the gambling records and loan applications were inadmissible. He tied everything up in legal technicalities that required additional hearings, expert witnesses, and endless delays. Weeks turned into months. During discovery, Graham deposed me for 6 hours straight, asking invasive questions about my finances, my relationship with my grandmother, my decision to keep the real jewelry in a bank vault rather than at home. He tried to make it sound suspicious, as though I had been hiding assets from my husband. "Why did you not tell Derek about the bank vault?" Graham asked, leaning forward across the conference table. "Because it was my inheritance," I replied steadily. "My separate property. I was not obligated to disclose it. But you were married. You shared a home, a life. Yet you kept this secret. Does that not suggest a lack of trust? If you are asking if I trusted Derek with my most valuable possessions, the answer is clearly no. And given what he did the moment he found what he thought was that jewelry, I was right not to. Graham smiled thinly. Or perhaps you knew your husband was struggling financially, knew he was desperate to save his business, and you deliberately withheld resources that could have helped him succeed. I offered Derek advice, I said. I offered to review his business plan, to introduce him to contacts in the tech industry, to help him develop a sustainable model. What I did not offer was blank checks for a failing venture. That is not withholding resources. That is basic financial sense. The deposition went on like that for hours. Graham trying to paint me as a heartless gatekeeper, me pushing back with facts and logic. But the worst was yet to come. The trial itself began 8 weeks after Derek filed his counterpetition. Caroline had managed to get most of our evidence admitted despite Graham's objections, but the judge warned us that he would consider Derek's mental state and addiction issues when making his final ruling. Derek took the stand first. Graham led him through a carefully scripted testimony that portrayed him as a victim of circumstance and disease. "I loved my wife," Derek said, his voice quivering with emotion that looked genuine unless you knew him as well as I did. "I wanted to build something for us, a future we could both be proud of. But Ida was always so cautious, so risk-averse. She had this massive inheritance from her grandmother, hundreds of thousands of dollars in jewelry and property, and she kept it all locked away. Meanwhile, I was trying to keep my business afloat with nothing but credit cards and hope." "Tell us about the jewelry sale," Graham prompted. "It was a moment of weakness," Derek said, looking down at his hands. "I was in the grip of my addiction. I was not thinking clearly. I found the combination to the safe, and when I saw all that jewelry just sitting there, unused, I thought maybe Ida had been hiding this from me for a reason. Maybe she did not trust me. Maybe she never believed in me. And I was angry. So I took it." "Did you know the pieces were costume jewelry?" "Not until after the sale. If I had known, I never would have done it. I thought I was using our marital assets to invest in our future. When Ida told me they were fakes, I was devastated." And then she laughed. She actually laughed at me. He looked up at me in the gallery, his eyes glistening with tears. That was when I realized how little she cared about me, how little our marriage meant to her. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and call him a liar, to demand that the judge see through this performance. But Caroline's hand on my arm kept me still. Paige testified too. That was perhaps the most surreal moment, watching my husband's mistress take the stand and describe our marriage from the outside. "Derek was so sad all the time," Paige said, her voice soft and sympathetic. "He would tell me about his wife, how cold she was, how she refused to support his dreams. He felt trapped in a marriage with someone who did not understand him." "Did he ever mention his gambling problem?" Graham asked. "Yes. He was very honest about it with me. He was trying to get help, trying to overcome it. He saw it as a disease, something he needed to fight. But his wife used it against him, used it as a reason to withhold love and financial support." Caroline cross-examined her ruthlessly, pointing out the affair, the lies, the messages where Derek promised to leave me once he had money. But Graham had prepared Paige well. She deflected and minimized, painting the affair as an emotional connection born out of Derek's loneliness rather than calculated betrayal. Then it was my turn to testify. I told the truth. All of it. The theft, the fraud, the identity theft, the sold watches, the fake burglary, the gambling debts. I laid out the timeline of Derek's deceptions, showing how each lie built upon the last until our entire marriage was revealed as a facade. But Graham tore into me on cross-examination. "You claim to have loved your husband, but you set him up to fail, did you not?" "I did not set him up. I protected my assets." "By deliberately leaving fake jewelry where you knew he might find it?" "By taking precautions my grandmother advised." "Your grandmother who died 2 years ago?" How convenient that she is not here to verify this story. It is not a story. It is the truth. A truth that paints you as a victim, while your husband, a man struggling with addiction and mental health issues, is branded as a criminal. Tell me, did you ever love Derek? Or was this always about money? I loved who I thought he was, I said, my voice shaking despite my efforts to stay calm. I loved the man he pretended to be. But that man never existed. The trial dragged on. Expert witnesses testified about gambling addiction, about the psychology of financial abuse, about the validity of post-nuptial agreements. Each side presented their narrative, and the judge listened, impassive and impossible to read. During a break in testimony, Caroline pulled me aside. "There is something you need to know," she said. "My investigator found additional information about Derek, about his past." She handed me a folder. Inside were documents from Derek's previous marriage. A marriage I knew nothing about. "He was married before?" I asked, stunned. "For 4 years, divorced 7 years ago. His first wife filed a restraining order against him. She claimed financial abuse, emotional manipulation, and threats. The pattern is identical to what he did to you. He even sold some of her jewelry without permission." I read through the documents, my hands trembling. Derek's first wife, a woman named Amanda, had written a statement that could have been my own story. The lies, the gambling, the theft, the betrayal, all of it. "Why did I not know about this?" I asked. "We ran background checks before we got married. He changed his last name after the divorce," Caroline explained. "Legally changed it from his birth name to his mother's maiden name. That is why the background check did not catch it. But my investigator was thorough. We have the court records, the name change documents, everything. Can we use this in the trial?" "Absolutely. This establishes a pattern of behavior. It shows the court that Derek's actions were not a one-time mistake driven by addiction, but a calculated pattern of abuse." We submitted the new evidence. Graham objected furiously, but the judge allowed it. Amanda, Derek's first wife, even agreed to testify via video conference. But before that testimony could happen, something else occurred that changed everything. Caroline called me late one night, her voice urgent. "Derek is planning to run." "What?" "My investigator has been monitoring his communications with Graham's permission for potential witness tampering. We just got a flag. Derek booked a one-way ticket to Mexico. He leaves in 3 days. He is planning to flee the jurisdiction before the final ruling, taking whatever money he can liquidate from his accounts." I felt cold all over. Can he do that? If he makes it across the border, it will be very difficult to bring him back. And any judgment we get will be worthless if he is not here to enforce it against. "What do we do?" "We go to the police," Caroline said. "With the identity theft charges, the fraud, and now evidence of flight risk, we can get a warrant. We bring this to a head. Ida. Tomorrow." That night, I did not sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. 3 years of marriage, to a man I never really knew. A grandmother who tried to protect me even after her death. A system that almost let an abuser walk away unpunished. But not anymore. Tomorrow, Derek would learn that he had not been playing chess with an amateur. He had been playing with someone who learned from a master. Caroline and I met with the police early the next morning. We brought everything. The identity theft documentation, the forged signatures, the credit card fraud evidence, the records of Derek's previous marriage and restraining order. But most importantly, we brought proof of his plan to flee. The detective assigned to the case, a woman named Linda Martinez, reviewed our materials with growing interest. "This is extensive," she said. "But the identity theft and fraud, those are solid charges. We can arrest him on those alone. The flight risk just makes it more urgent." "What about the jewelry sale?" I asked. "The fake pieces he sold to Henderson?" Detective Martinez shook her head. "That is trickier. Henderson cannot press charges without exposing his own criminal activity. And technically, your husband did not know they were fakes when he sold them. It is civil fraud at worst, criminal only if we can prove intent. Given Henderson's background, no prosecutor would touch that case. But the identity theft? Caroline prompted. That is a felony. Multiple counts. The forged signatures on loan applications, the credit cards opened in your name. This is serious stuff. Combined with the evidence of his previous pattern of behavior and the current flight risk, we can get a warrant today. We did. Judge Thompson, the same judge hearing our divorce case, issued the arrest warrant that afternoon. Detective Martinez coordinated with patrol officers to pick Derek up at his brother's apartment. But Caroline had a different idea. We have a final settlement conference scheduled for tomorrow morning, she said. Derek thinks we are coming to negotiate terms, to maybe find a compromise that avoids a full trial verdict. What if we let him think that? What if we let him walk into that conference room thinking he still has a chance to walk away with half your assets? You want to trap him, I said. I want justice, Caroline corrected. The warrant is active. We can execute it any time. But if we do it in the controlled environment of my office, with his attorney present, it will be cleaner. No chance of him fleeing or destroying evidence. Detective Martinez agreed to the plan. The arrest would happen at the settlement conference. That night, I did something I had not done in months. I looked at the real jewelry collection. I went to the bank, accessed the safety deposit box, and laid out each piece on the viewing table. The diamond necklace, genuine stones that caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. The emerald earrings, deep green and flawless. The pearl strands, natural pearls that had taken decades to form. The gold bracelets, hand-wrought by my grandmother's skilled fingers. The sapphire ring, a stone so blue it looked like captured ocean. $400,000 worth of precious gems and metals. But more than that, they represented my grandmother's life work, her legacy, her love for me. She had known, somehow, that I would need protection. She had prepared me without ever spelling out the danger. Her lessons about jewelry making, about the difference between real and fake, about keeping secrets and protecting what mattered, all of it had been intentional. Thank you, Grandma, I whispered to the empty room. Thank you for teaching me to be strong. The next morning, Derek arrived at Caroline's office at 10 sharp. He wore a suit, freshly pressed, and had styled his hair. He looked nervous but hopeful. Graham was with him, carrying a briefcase full of counterproposals. They did not know that Detective Martinez and 2 uniformed officers were waiting in a conference room down the hall. Thank you for agreeing to meet, Graham said, settling into his chair. We believe we have found a compromise that will work for both parties. He laid out his proposal. Derek would accept 30% of the house's value instead of 50%. He would waive spousal support in exchange for keeping his car and half the furniture. He would agree to repay the $40,000 I spent on Henderson over time, 10 years at $4,000 per year. In exchange, Graham concluded, all criminal complaints will be dropped, and we will agree to a sealed divorce record. Clean slate for both parties. Caroline let him finish, then looked at me. I nodded. Before we respond to that proposal, Caroline said, there is something Derek should know. We have been doing some additional investigation into his background. She slid a folder across the table. Derek opened it, and the color drained from his face. Your previous marriage, Caroline said. To Amanda Harris, now Amanda Chen. The restraining order she filed, the identical pattern of financial abuse. The name change you underwent after that divorce to hide your history. Did you think we would not find it? Graham looked at Derek, confused. What is she talking about? You told me you had never been married before. Derek did not answer. He was staring at the documents, his hands shaking. And then there is this, Caroline continued, pulling out printed emails. Communications between Derek and his girlfriend Paige. Messages from 2 days ago where he discusses his plan to leave the country. A one-way ticket to Mexico purchased on a credit card that will max out his remaining credit. A plan to liquidate what few assets he has left and disappear before the final divorce ruling. That is not true, Derek said, but his voice was barely a whisper. It is all true, I said, speaking for the first time. Every word. And you know what the worst part is, Derek? I gave you so many chances. I gave you a chance to be honest 3 months ago, when I knew you were searching for the jewelry. I gave you a chance to come clean about the affair, about the gambling, about all of it. I even gave you a chance to walk away with some dignity after you signed the post-nuptial agreement. But you could not help yourself. You had to keep lying, keep manipulating, keep trying to take from me. Ida, please, Derek said, standing up. I can explain. Sit down, Mr. Derek, Detective Martinez said, walking into the room with the 2 officers. You are under arrest for identity theft, fraud, and forgery. The officers moved quickly, professionally. They cuffed Derek while reading him his rights. Graham was protesting, demanding to know what was happening, threatening lawsuits, but it was all noise. I watched Derek's face as reality crashed down on him. The shock, the fear, the dawning understanding that this time there was no escape. No manipulation would work. No lies would save him. You set me up, he said, looking at me with something like hatred in his eyes. From the beginning, the fake jewelry in the safe, everything. You set me up. No, I said calmly. You set yourself up. Every choice you made, every lie you told, every time you chose deception over honesty, that was all you. I just documented it. They took him away. Graham followed, already on his phone calling colleagues, trying to arrange bail. Caroline and I sat in the empty conference room, surrounded by scattered papers and abandoned coffee cups. It is over, she said. Almost, I replied. We still need to finish the divorce. That will be easy now. With the criminal charges, Graham will not be able to argue that Derek deserves any of your assets. The post-nuptial will stand. You will get everything you asked for. She was right. 2 weeks later, Derek accepted a plea deal to avoid prison time. In exchange for probation, mandatory gambling treatment, and full restitution to me, the prosecutor agreed not to pursue the maximum sentence. Derek would pay me back every penny over the next 10 years, or he would go to jail. The divorce was finalized 1 week after that. I got the house, the jewelry, all of our shared assets. Derek got his car and his freedom, conditional as it was. But as I signed the final papers, I felt no triumph, only exhaustion and a strange sense of emptiness. You should be proud, Caroline said. You fought back, you won. How many people in your situation would have had the courage to do what you did? I do not feel courageous, I admitted. I feel tired. That is normal, she said gently. You have been through trauma. Give yourself time to heal. I left her office and drove home, to the house that was now legally mine alone. I walked through the empty rooms, seeing the spaces where Derek's things used to be. The gaps on the bookshelves, the empty hangers in the closet, the missing chair from the dining room table. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt haunted. That night, I did something I had been avoiding for weeks. I called my mother. "Hello, sweetheart," she answered, her voice still a little weak from her recovery, but warm with love. "How are you doing?" And just like that, the dam broke. I cried, deep, wrenching sobs that I had been holding back for months. I told her everything, all the details I had spared her while she was sick. The betrayal, the lies, the legal battles, the arrest. My mother listened without interrupting, letting me purge the poison of those months until I finally ran out of words. "I am so proud of you," she said when I finished. "Not because you won, but because you stood up for yourself. You recognized abuse and refused to accept it. That takes strength most people never find." "I feel broken," I admitted. "Of course you do. But broken things can heal, and sometimes they heal stronger than before." We talked for another hour, about her recovery, about my plans for the future, about healing and hope. When I finally hung up, I felt lighter than I had in months. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of clarity. I knew what I needed to do. I needed to make something good come from this pain. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back at me. She looked older somehow, but also stronger, more certain. The girl who had married Derek, who had believed in fairy tales and happy endings, she was gone. In her place was someone who understood that strength was not about never getting hurt. It was about how you responded when you did. I had spent those 3 months in therapy, working through the betrayal, the anger, the grief for the marriage I thought I had. My therapist, Dr. Sarah Kim, helped me understand patterns I had been following my whole life. The need to be liked, to be accommodating, to smooth over problems rather than confront them directly. You were not responsible for Derek's choices, Dr. Kim told me during one session, but you can take responsibility for your own patterns moving forward, for recognizing red flags earlier, for trusting your instincts instead of explaining them away. She was right. Looking back, I could see the warnings I had ignored. Derek's charming deflections when I asked about his finances, his reluctance to discuss his past relationships, the way he always positioned himself as the victim in every story, never taking accountability, the slow erosion of my boundaries, so gradual I barely noticed until they were gone. I ignored every sign, I said. I made excuses for him, because I wanted to believe we were building something real. That does not make you weak, Dr. Kim said. That makes you human. We all want to believe in love. The lesson is not to stop believing, but to believe with your eyes open. Those words stayed with me as I began to rebuild my life. My mother came to stay with me for 2 weeks after she recovered fully from her pneumonia. We spent long evenings on my back porch, drinking tea and talking about everything. She shared stories about my father, about their marriage, about the times she had to stand up for herself even when it scared her. I never trusted Derek, she admitted one night. I know I should have said something earlier, but you seemed happy, and I thought maybe I was being overprotective. What did you see that I missed? I asked. The way he talked about money, she said. Every conversation somehow came back to what he needed, what he deserved, what he was owed. And the way he spoke about your grandmother's inheritance, like it was his lottery ticket rather than your legacy. Good partners celebrate your blessings. They do not resent them. I thought about that a lot after she left. About the difference between a partner who builds you up and one who sees you as a resource to be mined. But I was not content to just heal privately. I wanted to do something with this pain, to transform it into something useful. I started researching financial abuse in relationships. I was shocked by how common it was, how many people, mostly women, experienced exactly what I had gone through. The secret debts, the forged signatures, the manipulation and gaslighting around money. It was an epidemic hiding in plain sight. So I started writing. First, just journal entries processing my own experience. Then blog posts, sharing my story anonymously. I wrote about the warning signs of financial abuse, about how to protect yourself, about legal resources available to victims. The response was overwhelming. Within weeks, my blog had thousands of readers. Comments poured in from people who had experienced similar situations, who felt seen and validated for the first time. Many had never told anyone about their experiences. Afraid of being judged or blamed, I realized I had found my purpose. I used some of the money from my grandmother's jewelry collection to start a nonprofit organization. I called it the Legacy Project, named after the inheritance that had ultimately saved me. Our mission was to provide legal support and financial counseling to people escaping financially abusive relationships. We partnered with local law firms to offer pro bono legal consultations. We connected victims with financial advisors who could help them rebuild their credit and secure their assets. We provided emergency funds to help people leave dangerous situations when they had no money of their own. Within 6 months, we had helped over 50 people. Within a year, that number tripled. I spoke at events, sharing my story publicly now. I wrote articles for magazines and newspapers about financial abuse awareness. I lobbied for better legal protections and mandatory financial education in schools. The work was exhausting but fulfilling in a way I had never experienced before. Every person we helped, every life we changed, felt like a small redemption for the pain I had endured. One afternoon, almost a year after my divorce was finalized, I received an email that stopped me in my tracks. It was from Amanda, Derek's first wife. "Dear Ida," it read. "I read your article in the Times about financial abuse and recognized your name. I wanted to reach out to thank you. For years, I thought what happened to me was my fault, that I should have been smarter or stronger. Seeing you speak publicly about Derek, about the pattern of abuse, it helped me finally forgive myself. I also wanted you to know that I reported him to the police for what he did to me. Your case gave me the courage to come forward. They reopened my case, and I got justice finally. Thank you for being brave enough to tell the truth. You saved more than just yourself," I cried reading that email. Good tears this time, healing tears. I met Amanda for coffee the following week. We sat in a small cafe downtown, two women connected by the same nightmare, finding solidarity and friendship in its aftermath. "How are you doing now?" I asked her. "Good," she said, and I could see she meant it. "I remarried 3 years ago to someone who actually treats me like a partner. We have a daughter. I run my own business. I am happy. That gives me hope," I admitted. "You will be happy too," Amanda said. "Maybe not today, maybe not this year, but you will get there, and you will be stronger for having survived this." She was right about that. As the months passed, I found myself opening up to new possibilities. I joined a book club, made new friends who knew nothing about Derek or my past. I took up painting, something I had always wanted to try but never made time for. I traveled, visited places I had dreamed about, but Derek never wanted to go. I was discovering who I was outside of marriage, outside of trauma, and I liked the person I was becoming. Dating was not on my radar yet, but I was okay with that. I was learning to be content with my own company, to find joy in small moments, a good cup of coffee in the morning, the way sunlight streamed through my kitchen windows, the satisfaction of helping someone through our nonprofit. One evening, sitting in my home office reviewing applications for our assistance program, I found myself thinking about my grandmother, about all the lessons she taught me without me realizing I was learning. She taught me that real value is not always visible on the surface, that costume jewelry could look like diamonds if crafted with skill and care, that protecting what matters requires planning and foresight, that trust should be earned, not freely given. But she also taught me about resilience, about creating beauty from raw materials, about the difference between what glitters and what endures. The jewelry collection was still in the bank vault. I had not touched it since the divorce, except for the few pieces I sold to fund the nonprofit. Sometimes I thought about selling the rest, using the money to expand our work. But something held me back. Those pieces were my grandmother's legacy, yes, but they were also a reminder of my own strength, a symbol of the wisdom that saved me and the courage it took to fight back. Maybe someday I would pass them down to a daughter or niece, along with the lessons my grandmother passed to me. The importance of financial independence, the necessity of protecting yourself, the wisdom to recognize real value from convincing imitation. Or maybe I would keep them forever, a private reminder that I survived, that I fought, that I won. 2 years after my divorce, I stood on a stage at a conference for domestic violence prevention, looking out at an audience of 500 people. I was there to speak about financial abuse, to share my story, to offer hope to people who felt trapped. "I want to tell you about my grandmother," I began, "and about the inheritance that saved my life, though not in the way you might think. I told them everything. About Derek, about the fake jewelry, about the trap I set and the battle I fought. But more importantly, I told them about the lessons learned, about the importance of having your own resources, about trusting your instincts when something feels wrong. Financial abuse thrives in silence, I said. It depends on victims feeling ashamed, feeling like they should have known better, feeling like it is somehow their fault. But I am here to tell you, it is not your fault, and you are not alone, and there is a way out. After the speech, dozens of people lined up to talk to me, to share their stories, to ask for resources, to thank me for speaking up. One woman, probably in her 60s, took my hand and said, "I have been married for 40 years to a man who controls every penny. I thought I was too old to change anything, but listening to you, I realize it is never too late to stand up for yourself." Moments like that made everything worthwhile. Every painful memory, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt and fear. It all led here, to this purpose, to this ability to help others. As I drove home that evening, I thought about where I had been 2 years ago. Broken, betrayed, unsure if I would ever feel whole again. And I thought about where I was now. Strong, purposeful, grateful, even for the pain that led me here. My phone rang. It was Caroline, my attorney who had become a close friend. "How was the conference?" she asked. "Good," I said. "Really good. I think we are making a difference, Caroline." "We are," she agreed. "I had 3 new clients this week who found us through your articles. Women who might have stayed silent otherwise. You gave them the courage to act." After we hung up, I pulled into my driveway and sat in my car for a moment, looking at my house. My home, truly mine, filled with memories I was proud of now. I thought about the question I always asked myself in hard moments. What would my grandmother do? And I realized I already knew the answer. She would do exactly what I had done. Fight back, stand strong, transform pain into purpose. Trust is precious and should be earned, not freely given. I learned that the hard way. Protecting yourself is not selfish. It is necessary. Financial independence is not just about money. It is about freedom and safety. When someone shows you who they are through their actions, believe them the first time. Do not wait for the second or third or 10th chance. Believe them immediately. And sometimes, the worst betrayals lead us to our strongest selves. I thought the jewelry was my inheritance. But the real inheritance was something more valuable than gems and gold. It was wisdom. It was the knowledge of my own worth. It was the strength to stand alone and the courage to fight for myself. Derek took a lot from me. My trust, my peace, 3 years of my life. But he also gave me something, though he never meant to. He gave me clarity. He showed me exactly who I was capable of being when pushed to the edge. He revealed strength I never knew I possessed. For that, in a twisted way, I was almost grateful. I walked into my house, made myself dinner, and settled in for the evening with a good book and a cup of tea. Simple pleasures that felt like luxuries after years of chaos. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Thinking of you, sweetheart. Love you always." I smiled and texted back. "Love you too, Mom. I am doing good. Really good." And I meant it. The jewelry Derek sold, the costume pieces he pawned off for $80,000, they were sitting in evidence storage somewhere, probably forgotten by now. But the real collection, the genuine legacy my grandmother left me, that was safe and secure. Just like me. I had fought back. I had won. Not just in court, not just financially, but in the ways that mattered most. I had reclaimed my life, my dignity, my sense of self. I had transformed trauma into purpose and pain into power. And that was worth more than all the diamonds in the world. Now, I want to ask you something. Have you ever ignored red flags in a relationship because you wanted to believe things would get better? Have you ever made excuses for someone's behavior when deep down you knew something was wrong? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might help someone else recognize their own situation and find the courage to act. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it. You never know whose life you might change by simply spreading awareness about financial abuse and the importance of protecting yourself. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being part of this community. Remember that you deserve respect, honesty, and genuine partnership in all your relationships. Never settle for less than you deserve. And always, always trust your instincts. They are usually right. Stay strong, stay wise, and take care of yourself. Until next time.